The goal of this project is to change the world. The ambition is great, but is it even possible? To help you understand my intention, the way in which I want to achieve it, and to believe in the reality of its achievement, I will use reflections to bring you closer to the ideas I rely on. Before I begin, we must realize one basic thing that we must keep in mind at all times. There are roughly 7.5 billion people in the world. Every one of these huge numbers is unique. It is realistically possible to say that each person lives in their own world and understands it differently. If you give the same text to 1,000 people to read independently, each of them will understand it differently, with some variations. This is because people understand things differently within their own capabilities and abilities, within the experiences they have gained, and within the society in which they move. There are many factors that influence their thinking, and they must simply be respected. No one lives in the eyes of others. Everyone encounters different situations and problems in their lives, and each person works with different information. This diversity is immense. I realize that my thoughts will not appeal to everyone, and I could even offend, confuse, or shock someone. Believe me, that is not my goal. Therefore, I will not and do not want to present my view as something exact, precise, and only in that way. No, my intention is only to draw your attention to the thoughts that I personally consider to be the foundation from which you can then take your own direction. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Uritas. I was born in 1987, and since 2010, I have been a co-owner, operator, bartender, and cleaner, laughing face, in a bar in Senek called Seska Pivnica. Working with people has given me a certain overview. I have noticed that when people solve a problem, don't understand something, or wonder why things are the way they are, they don't start with the basic problem. Instead, they start somewhere in the middle or sometimes at the end and only see the consequence of something that has its roots somewhere else. That is why I think it is very important for a person to have a well-founded opinion, especially about how everything works, which includes the world, the universe, and life in general. I will start with that. It is a broad topic, and there are many perspectives on it, from simple to complex, but even today, there is no more comprehensive image of it. In the spiritual realm, religions strive for this, while in the scientific realm, there are scientific theories. They are sometimes so different from each other that it seems impossible to put them together into a cohesive whole. Time is fast, and people often do not have the time or inclination to study hundreds of texts to create the most objective image/opinion possible. Everything is simplified, and in the end, most people believe in something that, upon closer inspection, makes no sense. When considering the basic functioning of the world, I started from 3 possibilities. 1/The world, life as a whole, is finite. Just as it came into existence, it will also cease to exist. 2/The world is partially infinite, meaning it came into existence and will not cease to exist. 3/The world is infinite, it always was, is, and will be. From my point of view, it is only worthwhile to discuss the third possibility. Namely, when I take into account the probably most popular first theory about the beginning and end of the world, upon closer inspection, it is not only terrifying, but also incredibly simple and liberating. For all believers, I have one frightening prophecy: in about 130 years, a global catastrophe will occur and the entire current generation, 7.5 billion people, will die out, quite naturally, from old age. So it doesn't matter what problems we have, what position we are in, it doesn't matter how everything works, because we will die once and everything ends. Life loses its meaning and can be imagined as a flash in the dark. Someone might say, the meaning is to live for children, to leave another generation. Well, what about those who cannot have children? A lost generation? Maybe, but I don't think so. There is no reason to philosophize, it's time to have fun, laughing face. Yes, this is also a real possibility, so all the stresses, career pursuits, money, etc. are just nonsense, filling our free time, that we have made up ourselves and burdened ourselves with. Nothing profound, everything as simple as a slap, and that's where I would end. I admit that I couldn't rely on anything in the second possibility. Why should something arise out of nothing and function indefinitely? Okay, I realize that my understanding is limited, so I try to rely on my own experiences, what I have experienced in life, what I have observed, and so on when forming an opinion. I consider experience to be the main test of correctness in life. If I experience something, or observe something for a long time in my life, I am convinced that it is true. Of course, experience also has its limits. I can't try everything, experience everything. Nonetheless, so far in my life, I have not observed a single thing that works on the principle of forever from now on. Perhaps you have, I don't know. I'm getting to the third point, which is that life, in general, the world, is infinite, always was, is, and will be. What plays into the favor of this theory is knowledge from elementary school. In physics class, we learned about the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. It was the first definition in my life that confirmed that I won't understand life just like that. So what is that energy? I don't know, but I imagine the whole world composed of it. Upon closer inspection, we would find that we swim in a sea of energy. Somewhere it is thinner, and somewhere thicker. In fact, all, apparently, matter is only densified energy. However, energy only tells me about the structure of the world, its main building unit. It does not give me the answer to the essential thing, which is that incredible complexity, and yet simplicity, the organizational miracle that is the world. Some people don't see organization in it and attribute everything to chance. The organization that I see in the world is incredible, and yet it seems to me that it functions on relatively simple principles. In order to better understand what I'm getting at, I have to turn to my own experience, which I assume you share. Over the time I've been alive, I perceive, observe, and can state that my body changes. It grows to a certain age and then declines. However, this physiological change in my body does not affect my view of the world, i.e., how I perceive reality. It seems to me as if I've always looked at the world the same way as when I was a child, or at any age for that matter. Of course, the experiences I've gained, the information I've gathered over that time, influence my decisions, my opinions, but the perception of reality, consciousness, remains the same and never changes. What if consciousness is what's infinite, in which everything arises and energy is its building block that creates everything? What if consciousness is the space in which everything arises and its idea determines what is created from energy in space? There may be more possibilities, but the point remains the same. Okay, if that's the case, it's still strange, because as I mentioned at the beginning, there are many people in the world, and not just people. Autonomy, uniqueness, independence, can be easily observed in animals, plants, so there is an incredible number of consciousnesses here that could create harmony in one whole together. But what if the whole world works similarly to the internet? The realization is necessary that every functioning technology is based on the laws of nature or the principle of its functioning. So what is the internet? It's an abstract concept of a whole. It is a connection of a multitude of individual devices, computers, servers, and anything else, that communicate with each other and together create an information network. So what if everything is interconnected and there is a constant exchange of information, creating a huge network/world? You may say that everyone should know everything since they are all connected to one network. Yes, but the capacity of each device depends on the type, kind, of device, which makes it impossible for people to understand everything and know everything. Absorbing an infinite amount of data into one's memory and creating their own image is similar to trying to copy the volume of data on the internet into a desktop computer. On the other hand, I also notice that if a person focuses on a problem, directs their attention to a certain part, they can always find a solution. There are countless people and their testimonies who have had an inspiration in their life. They were in a situation where they didn't know what to do, so they prayed, or started meditating, or just focused, call it what you want, and they got an idea that they didn't have the opportunity to know, and they managed to solve/overcome the problem. The pioneers of science and technology or people who have invented something could tell us more about it. However, personally, I think that everyone has encountered a similar situation. So theoretically, yes, We have access to all data, but we can only use a part of it at a time. Therefore, to understand at least the basic connections, we need to simplify reality properly. Let's try to imagine the world as an incredible number of autonomous units, consciousnesses, that are connected to each other, share information in a certain way, and create one common network, one whole world, through feedback. More precisely, it is a network of a huge number of networks of different sizes because every consciousness, autonomous unit, creates its own network, with its capacity, at least as it appears in nature. Let's take our human body, for example. I can say with certainty that I only have one consciousness, but there is an incredible number of units that create my body shape and form, cells, atoms, quarks. In my body, it seems that there is a space comparable in size to our universe for them. It's all just a matter of the scale at which we look at the world. I like to toy with the idea that the world is made up of a network of infinite universes, autonomous units. The property of the universe that we must not forget, and which is scientifically proven, is that the universe in which we live is constantly expanding. In my words, the universe is constantly expanding and creating a larger and denser network. The intention is easy to imagine. The larger the network, the more storage space for data, and the volume of transmitted information increases. The world thus becomes constantly more complex and miraculous. I say, therefore, that autonomous units are constantly being created or formed for the purpose of increasing the possibilities and abilities of the whole. I cannot tell you the exact principle of creation or formation to maintain energy balance. It seems as if there is only one consciousness that constantly fractally divides into an infinite number of consciousnesses with the same energy potential. It is also important to note that these autonomous units, consciousnesses, go through their own development. When they are created, they do not achieve the qualities of previous units, they start from scratch, have their own position in space, have their own path, and it takes some time until they acquire enough information, through experience, to create their own complex network. Does it really take time? Let me digress a bit. Automatically, when I think about the infinity of the world, I have to run into the problem of time. Does it really exist? At the beginning, I write that what if the world has always been and always will be. I use past, present and future because people are used to these terms and they help us. However, I should write only that the world is. Why? I think the present time is the only one that actually exists. The past and the future do not exist, they are just illusory concepts that we confuse for human abilities. I base this statement on my own experience. I have never experienced anything else but the present moment throughout my entire life. Any moment takes place in the present. Even now, as I write this text or as you read it, memory, the ability of a person to store their experiences, allows me to return to the past and visualize it again, even though it seems like the past, but even that visualization is happening in the present. When I think about last year's vacation, I'm thinking about it only now, not yesterday. The ability to plan, anticipate, which is a fundamental tool for creation, allows me to visualize something that could be part of my life but isn't yet, so it only seems like the future. I warn you, when I do an action in my business like everything for free tomorrow, don't get fooled because tomorrow when you come, it will be today, laughing face. Nothing happens in the past or the future, there is always only the present, which is constantly changing, transforming, just like energy. Maybe it's related. I return to the diversity and creation of consciousness. What do I mean when I write that autonomous units do not reach the qualities of previous units and start from scratch? The opposite seems to be true. You might say that every time a new child is born, the features of the parents are clearly visible on it. This is proof of the influence, development, and growth of autonomous units on their future generation. Either I'm wrong, or you should try to look at it from a different perspective. What if we need to consider that autonomous units, consciousness, do not arise from the reproduction of their carriers/bodies, humans, animals, plants, etc., but arise elsewhere, at a more elementary level? In the world, they begin from the simplest conscious life forms and, by gaining experience and increasing their level of awareness, they gradually embody themselves in more complex life forms, More precisely, it should be written that consciousness creates its own network/carrier based on its level of awareness. I am writing about a certain form of reincarnation. So if we are currently in a human body, I assume we have already experienced a lot. Body and consciousness need to be separated. Bodies can reproduce according to a programmed pattern, algorithm, and the predisposing abilities of a newborn body are visible, but consciousness arises independently, autonomously from any physical influences. Perhaps it is precisely because consciousness creates its body, its reality, and not the other way around. In the case of humans, when sperm penetrates the egg, it can only supply the missing energy needed to create a new body, but the plan of creation is held in the hands of consciousness, which has been allowed to materialize in this way. It is difficult to talk about the miracle of birth only in theory because there may be several variations. For a better explanation, observed experiences must help me. Notice, for example, a child's uniqueness at birth. Yes, physically, it resembles its parents and also has their innate abilities according to the genotype, possibly slightly modified/mixed, but situations in life are always solved on its own. It goes its own way, never that of its parent. If a child spends a long time with parents, their behavior may also be influenced by the behavior of the parents, but that does not mean that a situation/experience will not occur in their life that will ultimately influence them enough to decide to go their own way independently. Personally, I consider it a mistake when a parent does not take into account the uniqueness of their child in raising them and tries to force the child to follow in their footsteps, according to their ideas, claiming ownership of the child and constantly arguing that it is my child, and I can raise it as I wish. I am older and more experienced, I know what is good for them. Really, is it your child? Yes, by conceiving, you allowed them to create their shell, but you have not done anything with their consciousness. Really? Are you older and more experienced? Here one must realize the possibility that your consciousness, may be, for example, the first penetration, incarnation, into a human body, and your child may have already had more of these incarnations behind them, so paradoxically, you are not experienced, but your child is. I would not write about it if I had not encountered parents in life who, with their behavior, reminded me more of children and had not encountered their children who reminded me more of adults. Look, for example, at how every new human generation is more aware/better than the previous one. This is a natural development of autonomous units, consciousness. It is not at all about the development of their physical abilities because world records in the Olympics do not change with every generation, but it is about the development of consciousness because knowledge and technology are constantly changing. So I'm saying that the world is a network composed of a vast number of autonomous units that constantly communicate with each other, exchanging information in real time, and together, through feedback, create reality. The quality of reality depends on the level of individual consciousness, autonomous units, so new consciousness is constantly being created and the volume of transmitted data is increasing, creating a more complex and miraculous reality. Everything happens in real time, so the potential rate of consciousness development does not depend on time, but on the quality of information, gained through personal experience, transmitted through the network. Simple. If everything is as I write it, it would mean that we are capable of changing our reality in real time, raising the quality of many consciousnesses to a higher level, just by expanding the necessary information, in our case, through the artificial network that has already been created, the Internet. That will also be the main task of my project, to spread information. You may still think that it's foolishness, that reality cannot be changed for the better just by linking and spreading information, that it works completely differently and the world is controlled by evil and powerful people who prevent us from happiness and joy, laughing face. To convince you, I must draw your attention to the issue of good and evil. What are these abstract concepts of good and evil? I'll try to define them my way. I've noticed how in older sources, these concepts are often compared to light and darkness. Even to such an intensity that I ask myself the question whether we can put an equal sign between the pairs of light-darkness/good-evil. If that were the case, if our ancestors' experiences really suggested the same principle of functioning between the concepts, another relevant question would arise as to whether evil even exists. Namely, if I were to seek an answer in science and look closer at the issue of light and darkness, it seems to me that darkness does not exist at all. How so? Simply put, we cannot measure it in any way. How do we find out how much darkness, for example, is in a bag? By measuring how many lux there are in the bag, but lux is a unit of light. Darkness does not have its own unit, so darkness is just a concept that tells us about the absence of light. Evil is a state when good is absent, and personally, I also assume that the same applies to the pair of ignorance-knowledge. Just for interest, people who hold knowledge are often called enlightened. Why do you think that is? So ignorance is just a lack of knowledge. On the one hand, we have light, good, knowledge; on the other hand, darkness, evil, ignorance. Do you understand what I mean by that? While I have no doubts about the existence of one side, paradoxically, I do about its opposite. I'll go back to the definition of good and evil. According to me, evil is a state when knowledge is absent. In other words, we are not fighting with evil, but with stupidity. People are not evil, they are ignorant. No person is inherently evil, it is the level of their knowledge and awareness that determines their behavior. Is it really so? Let's look at it again through experience. If a person kills another person, for example, for property, they are not doing it out of passion, but out of the conviction that by acquiring someone else's savings, their life will improve. The same applies to thieves. Or, if someone bullies, mocks, or gossips about another, it only shows their lack of understanding of the equality between autonomous individuals and the principle of their functioning. There are many examples and combinations of ignorant behavior. Conversely, conscious behavior, a higher level of knowledge, awareness, and consciousness, we designate by the abstract concept, which we often do not even understand ourselves, of love. Love means seeing the same potential in others as in oneself, taking into account differences in levels and realizing that together we create a common network, the world. The truth is that in this world, I also notice the existence of sophisticated evil. Evil that consciously tries to influence people, uses a high level of knowledge to gain influence and achieve its goals. However, this evil is never the executor of its own thoughts. It has clean hands, because all the dirty work is done by others. Those who are less aware, who believe in it, come under its influence, and who then subsequently bear the consequences of their actions. The question arises whether an environment full of contrast between good and evil, knowledge and ignorance, is intentionally being created for us. Whether the evil I am describing paradoxically aims to develop society and increase its awareness. From my point of view, it would be a very effective way of educating autonomous units of consciousness, as contrast enables us to see and distinguish. While a fish swims in water, it does not know that water exists. It finds out only when it emerges above the surface and through its own experience feels the contrast, difference, between water and air. Therefore, I perceive life on Earth as a school, where conditions are created for the development of individual consciousnesses, and where consciousness, based on its own experiences, trials and errors, increases its level. On closer inspection, we will find that teaching places great emphasis on each autonomous unit coming to awareness in its own way and at its own pace, which is the basis for diversity and affirmation of free will. Who is then the teacher, the creator of contrast in this school? I would like to point out that we are in a slightly sci-fi section, maybe just a phi section, laughing face. I repeat, it doesn't have to be true, it's just a certain assumption, a thought. Precision is not important, but the point is. What if some other advanced race, or even advanced races, is the teacher? What if humans are creations of these races? In other words, what if we are artificial intelligence? Just by looking at the data from our scientists, from our understanding, about the size and age of our universe, where the numbers are in billions, and when I see how in the 21st century people are still trying to find a place on Earth where life is absent, it appears to me that life forms are very adaptive and quickly adaptable with relatively rapid development. 100,000 years is almost nothing in the scale of the universe. Comparing planets with a deviation in the emergence of 100,000 years, we call them twins. Now try to imagine that life on another planet, and there are those planets, appeared only 100,000 years earlier. How much more advanced could the civilization be compared to ours? when we have developed from using spears to producing atomic bombs in 50-100 years? What if other civilizations developed far ahead of us and adopted technologies we haven't even dreamed of yet? According to my assumption, the key to their success and development must have been an understanding of the basic principle of how the world works, that the world functions like a network, and the more complex and dense the network is, the more beneficial it is for the whole, which is why they may be trying to artificially densify it. Also, the assumption of high awareness of races suggests to me that love prevails among them, not hatred. This could possibly explain why we are not already hunched over and used as a workforce or attraction in some circus. Just look at us and our level of understanding. What do we do to lower life forms? We ruthlessly exploit them for our own benefit. We eat them, we simply take them as things and pretend it's okay. We waive some law of nature and just defend ourselves. If it were a law of nature, we would have long since been an energy source for other civilizations. They would have no need to hide from us, their technological dominance would prevent any resistance from us. The fact that people are allowed to live freely, go their own way, develop in their own direction on their own planet, may indicate either the non-existence of more advanced civilizations, or even if they exist, there is no way to reach us, or they do exist, they can reach us, but they care about our own development. They do not want to influence us with their presence, as they realize that preserving autonomy/uniqueness is the only way that leads to diversity and at the same time to increasing overall performance. How to find out which option it is? Let's take a look at the world. How many sightings and testimonies of UFOs have been reported around the world since the 1930s? I won't evaluate how many of them are false, mistakes, and so on. It's enough for me if there's only one sighting that is evidence of the existence of another civilization. Does it exist? I don't know. I leave it to your consideration. For a moment, let's assume that yes, indeed, there is another more advanced civilization. Why is it hiding from us? Why doesn't it use its advanced technology to teach us or share its knowledge with us, which could accelerate our development? Well, because autonomy, diversity, and variety must be preserved, only then can we achieve efficient development as a whole. Furthermore, development would certainly not be accelerated, quite the opposite, there would be a risk of humanity destroying itself with new technologies. Each autonomous unit has its own pace of development, its own path. Leaps in development should not be made because then we witness counterproductive results. Just look at what happened when we were allowed to invent nuclear energy. Technology to cover the energy consumption of a growing population. Obviously, we were not ready for it at the time, since we immediately made 2 nuclear bombs and dropped them on our own cities. The difference in knowledge level between humans and another civilization simply does not allow us to meet them, so they segregate. To put it differently, imagine if you set a goal to raise the level of consciousness of a tiger. Believe me, if you spent more time with it personally in its environment, it would eat you, laughing face. We have another example right under our noses. On Earth we see differences in level between human races, between white, black, yellow, and red. Until they reach a similar level of consciousness, they cannot be integrated into one society, otherwise various types of problems arise between them. In the past, it was more visible when each race had its own continent or part of the continent, naturally segregating/separating from each other. Therefore, as long as the level of human consciousness does not reach at least the limit of understanding that the universe is interconnected and it depends on everyone to achieve their own development, otherwise written, love, does not prevail. It is not possible for us to meet other civilizations or to use advanced technologies. It is very important for the progress of humanity to surpass this level. This project is to be one of many attempts to reach this boundary. I don't want to be a bad prophet, but if we don't reach the limit in time, if we don't stop competing with each other and start working together, we will face enormous challenges, and even witness terrible horrors. What's the matter? We need to remember that we all sail through space on the same ship on Earth. The population growth rate, not to mention the issue of the ship itself, is much higher than the current development of our energy systems. The level of technology we use is not sufficient for sustainable long-term development of society. The current economy is trying to balance the population and its optimal consumption, but every year it becomes more and more evident that the economy cannot handle it. More and more people do not have access to sufficient resources. In other words, people are becoming increasingly impoverished. You might say it's because there are many millionaires and multinational corporations in the world that drain the economy and are responsible for it. But is it really so? Then why don't they invest their acquired resources back into the economy? Because they are greedy and selfish, blah blah blah. I'm not arguing that resources couldn't be redistributed more fairly and efficiently, but the point is elsewhere. Try to look at the problem from a different perspective. Imagine that the funds that belong to large corporations and are currently frozen in accounts or invested in virtual markets suddenly entered circulation. People would have as much money as they wanted, and what would be the consequence? An immediate increase in consumption, resources, of non-renewable raw materials and energy on planet Earth. Earth would be devastated within a year. We would be like locusts. We would have everything we wanted, yes, but we would also have an unsuitable environment for life, and we would be buried in waste. The role of the economy is to regulate the consumption of energy and resources on planet Earth, and the form in which this happens is not important. Until humanity has the necessary advanced technologies, true prosperity will never be possible on Earth. Until then, people will try to come up with alternative development options according to their level of knowledge. It seems to me that some people currently see the best way to solve our problem as population reduction, the so-called Golden Billion Plan. The reduction is not planned to be carried out discreetly, non-violently. It can be sterilized for a while, but if you look at any population growth graph for the last period and see the exponential curve, you will understand that long-term survival is not possible. Therefore, I rather think that we are facing mass extinction through wars, diseases, and natural disasters. Depending on how we think, the real level of our understanding can be seen. Instead of utilizing our potential, which grows with our population, and starting to collaborate, connect our minds, and use our capabilities for the development of new technologies that would allow survival, potential relocation, and space travel, we are considering our own self-destruction. We won't make the necessary technological progress until we change the state of our thinking. It's essential to understand that no more advanced group of scientists, or civilization, for that matter, laughing face, would allow a monkey to hold a machine gun. Actually, I saw a video on the internet where people did that. I don't know if it was a fake or a real video, but it amused me how that monkey almost shot them, laughing face. Therefore, until we reach the necessary level of awareness, we will be prevented from further energy and technological progress, and they would rather cook and suffocate us in our own juices than risk giving us the necessary technology, and with our ignorance, threaten the existence of our shared world, since I assume that future technologies will operate on basic principles of reality. However, there's no need to be too scared. Personally, I'm an optimist. Just the fact that we managed to create a common network and connect the world in the atmosphere of competition gives me great hope that we can avoid the worst scenarios. Even if not, as they say, every cloud has a silver lining, so if potential disasters, or human errors, do not exceed a fatal threshold, their negative effects will help us mature. It can be said that the development of consciousness is an objective process that cannot be stopped, but there are many ways to achieve it. How do I envision an optimistic future? A little bit fi again, laughing face. I am convinced that people, right after a breakthrough in thinking, in achieving a new level of consciousness, together with our scientists, will make great breakthroughs in science and in the research of new technologies. They will allow us to stabilize the ecosystem on the planet, ensure our energy security, and extend the time needed for resettlement, or for the creation of a new temporary artificial planet. Wait, what? An artificial planet? Yes, the resources for that are certainly available. After all, we claim that we swim in a sea of energy. The only thing that will never run out in the world is energy. The challenge will be to invent a technology that will allow us to obtain unlimited energy from space, to materialize it, and to invent a technology for recycling this energy. It could be a task for perhaps even my generation. If we succeed, all other current problems will cease to exist. Certainly, other problems will arise that cannot be foreseen now, but by involving our entire network and solving the situation, we will easily overcome them. We will become creators of our own reality, and I assume we will start to connect with our teachers in creating and teaching new artificial intelligences, new races. Oh, I almost forgot, and of course, truth and love will triumph. Laughing face. Laughing face. Laughing face. Okay, enough with visualizing the future. The future has an infinite number of variants, depending on how many autonomous units lean towards which variant at any given moment. While having a goal in life is good, as they say, to pursue it and look at it with both eyes always smells like stumbling over a curb. Laughing face. It is always necessary to focus on the current situation, on the present. The present represents a way of connecting to the network, from which creativity, new ideas, and solutions spring. The mistake of today's time is the ubiquitous haste. People unconsciously and improperly use their abilities. They overload their memory with the past and past grievances, instead of using it to learn from their acquired experiences. They overload their ability to plan and visualize by getting lost in time, creating virtual realities, and thinking too much about future obligations, instead of using it to present solutions to their current problems and achieve their goals. People don't spend much time in the present, they don't have time for such a luxury, they have a lot of obligations to think about. We chase after sources and don't realize that we are swimming in them all the time. All unconscious habits of behavior then lead to the inability to see an alternative to the current unsatisfactory state. The saying literally applies, the truth is so close that it cannot be seen. The key to self-development and at the same time to solving our problem lies precisely in the present. Notice, every spiritual exercise is focused on being present. Here and now. Learn to focus on the activities you are currently doing. It will bring a new quality to your life and enable you to realize your dreams. You can do anything you can imagine. Live your life in real time, be attentive, alert, and pay attention to your mistakes. Attention reveals unconscious habits of behavior. Realizing one's mistakes is the main foundation for their correction. Look at your loved one as a colleague, not a competitor. Remember, you both have the same potential, and differences in skill level do not mean someone has an advantage. Have understanding and empathy. Being at a higher level than your loved one does not mean you should use them, but rather help them get to a higher level. It is in all of our best interest to raise the level and performance of the network. Do not be afraid to use new technologies that connect us. Help each other with information from the internet and utilize the power of interconnected minds. Do not be scared of hoaxes, misinformation, conspiracies, or lies. Keep an open mind to all available ideas. Using your own experiences, you can easily filter out lies from the truth. Even if you cannot, the contrast between truth and foolishness will gradually lead you to a new level of awareness. Remember the biblical proverb, light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Lower levels of consciousness can never influence higher levels, so the old folks saying still applies, good always triumphs over evil. Think about it, if good and evil, knowledge and ignorance, light and darkness, were opposites and there was a balance between them, no one could ever state that one side had won. Therefore, we should not fear foolishness, nor should we attempt to censor it. All information has its justification. It will either give you something or the consequence of believing in nonsense will force you to think. In conclusion, I will briefly introduce my project to you. Why don't I call it a blog, but a project? It consists of 2 phases. In the first theoretical phase, I will use the internet to try to spread my ideas through articles to as wide an audience as possible, convince people to cooperate with each other, and thus gain the necessary influence to organize a network of people with similar views, at the same level. In the second practical phase, I will try to solve practical life problems with the already established network of people and build a new reality with other real projects, build a new world. I realize that it could be a long-term project. Its success depends on the quality of the information presented. Your reaction will directly affect the speed of project implementation. I sincerely believe that we can achieve great things together. I believe that we will learn to use our enormous potential for our common benefit. Project Z is meant to be the project of the last generation who lived on this planet unconsciously. Hopefully, we will succeed. Good luck, my friends. Uritus.